everyone. We are back finally with another episode 4 on the Koballa podcast, and we welcome you here. Really appreciate you tuning in for another episode. It's been a while since we last posted, but life gets in the way and we tend to get very busy, especially with our main line of work and a lot of other things too in my personal life, taking up a lot of my time, uh, preventing me to put up more episodes. But I definitely want to put as much as I can whenever I do have the time. So hopefully from this point on, I can put on more episodes and give you guys good content. So this topic has been on my mind for a while. I've been wanting to talk about this for a while, and I wanted this to be my next episode. And what I wanted to talk about today was how to really manage and navigate through different types of relationships. And so, I guess I could just explain like the different types of relationships there are when you go through life and how you manage through them. Now, I'm no relationship expert, but all I could share is just a lot of knowledge, a lot of wisdom, a lot of experiences that I had that I've learned not just from my own experiences, but also from other people. And hopefully, what I share is beneficial for you. That's always the intent. It's not for me to tell you what to do or tell you how to live your lives, but just to give perspective, just to give a little insight. And maybe you could apply the things that you learn here. I don't know, but I just like talking about it at the end of the day. And there could be things that you disagree with me or things that I don't know, or maybe the listeners out there could enlighten me on sharing their perspective on certain types of relationships. And I'd love to hear the feedback and the insight. So I don't want to come off as a know-it-all, but again, just want to share my perspective. And from all that I've learned, maybe I could give helpful tips or at least help you understand, what kind of relationships that we go through in life. And so this has been on my mind for a while because I've been thinking about this episode. I haven't got around to posting this or talking about this, but I have been thinking about it a lot. The types of relationships that we as human beings go through once we are and once we have entered into existence, into this universe as human beings. And so one of the first relationships, when you come into this world is being a child and having a parental child relationship. I mean, that's the first one you're exposed to, right? But as a baby, as a toddler, I mean, you have no awareness of this. All you have is needs and wanting food and wanting attention and being able to roam and explore within your own home or out on the playground. Everything's all new, and when you get to my age, you don't remember any of that, but your parents do. And from the parents' perspective, I mean, you're just 24/7 attention on the child that you just got. And so, you know, all your focus, if you really want to spend time with your child, should be on the kid, should be on your family, your spouse, and working together to raise a human being. Hopefully, um, someone that's loving and caring, that turns out to be a great adult, great person. I don't know. I guess it really depends on what you value. But whatever you decide to do, how you raise the kid is definitely going to influence the outcome and how they turn out. As a huge part, huge, very influential. So it's a huge responsibility. You could say there's a lot at stake there when it comes to raising a child. Now I'm coming from a perspective where, I don't have a family of my own. I'm not married. I don't have kids. So all I could share from is seeing it through the eyes of my peers and my friends that do have kids. And also from what other people tell me, a lot older people that have had families that have, you know, raised kids to be adults and sharing their perspective with me, and out of all the information and insight and my observations that I've got from seeing other people, you know, I just I just share what I see and what I observed. And even as a child, I mean, we all know, like, as you become an adult, you kind of, at least hopefully, you kind of look back and see, like, how you were raised, what your parents did to guide you, to teach you. And then you kind of understand why you behave the way you do, why you act a certain way. And throughout the course of my life, I think as I gotten older, that's something that has been very eye opening to me. And so, at my age, I've come to understand who I am and why I am the way I am. And a lot of that has to do with my parental influence. And obviously, if you look at the science too, the genes, the genetics are embedded in us as well. So maybe a lot of the behavioral patterns, or, you know, maybe the psyche that your parents have, or a lot of that is also instilled in the kid. And it's through nature, through genetic coding. It really shows a lot of the parents' characteristics. I mean, you could say, like, the kid acts more like the mom, or acts more like the father in certain ways, and you kind of see that right off the bat. And I personally believe that's through nature, through the genes, and also through nurture. Um, what the kid sees as he is interacting with his parents, and how the parents interact with each other and your siblings and other people. And so, that all takes a play into how you turn out to be as an adult. And so, going back to that type of relationship, well, if you fast forward to a kid from baby all the way to maybe a teen to adolescent, I mean, the child is largely dependent on the parent, and the parent could usually, at least a good parent, should spend a lot of time with their kids and have a lot of influence. And a lot of that is, a lot of teaching and correcting and disciplining their kid, making sure they do the right things, making sure that they're responsible, that they do everything that they're supposed to do. Um, Instill values and beliefs that the parents have, and it's all different. It's a wide range of beliefs, and a lot of those beliefs come from a deep root in religious values or cultural values that are instilled through, maybe your community, through society. uh, and so all these have an influence on how a parent instills these values into the kids. So there's a lot of teaching and a lot of influencing when you see the child develop through this parental child relationship. And as a child gets older, they develop their own ideas, they have their own friends, they go to school, and they become more exposed to different perspectives in life. And the older they get, the less independence that they want, the less dependent they are on their parents, and they want to get to a point where they want to be on their own. And as a parent, I guess you would have to have an understanding that you're just really setting them up to be adults. So what are you teaching them? What are you having them learn through school or through their friends, through community that you're surrounded with? And you want to, as a parent, you want to make sure that maybe the values that you hold dear to you, you want your child to have those same values. And so the child becomes more and more independent, and the parent at some point, has to let go and allow the kid to become an adult. And the child has to understand that there's responsibilities that come with it as you become more independent. And so, as you go through high school, or if you go through college, or if you start working, then you start building those responsibilities. And those responsibilities, responsibilities grow even more, when you have a partner, and when your child turns out to have kids and gets married, and it becomes this whole cycle, right? And so there's that relationship there, a lot of dependency in the beginning from the child to the parent, and a parent generally, spending a lot of time with their kid, instilling values, maybe taking an interest in the hobbies that their kids have, and showing a lot of support. And so, but that would be, I guess, the ideal parental child relationship, but it doesn't always go that way, right? I mean, not every family household has a father and a mother, or have two parents. A lot of times too, there's a lot of brokenness. There's a lot of divorces, and having shared custodies, and having a balance between like a stepfather, you know, step siblings, and all that. So you know that comes into the picture, and also single mothers and fathers, single parents, and that having a toll on the child. So there's all these other factors that come into play, and all these things have their own different influences. And I would I would make the argument that that's not the most beneficial thing for child development. I think the best structure would be having a mother and a father in the household and raising the child. And that could be a whole different conversation, or a whole podcast episode in itself. But that's just my opinion. And but yeah, but then you have kids that grow up with single parents, and then maybe that single parent has to work double shift just to provide for their family, and maybe that parent has multiple kids. And when you have a parent that's working that hard, it leaves the siblings on their own, and maybe at an early age they have to be more independent and start doing their own things, and a lot of idle time, a lot less time to spend with your parents, so there isn't much guidance there, but rather just trying to figure things out, how to get through life, how to get through this adolescent period where you don't know much, but it becomes more of a figure it out process. And maybe you do that through siblings, through brothers and sisters, but you somehow have to be able to navigate through that. And ideally, when you're at such a young age, at a teen or at an adolescent, you do need a lot of guidance. And so that's where it's tough because a lot of times maybe these kids or these teens have to learn the hard way when they could have probably had proper guidance and avoided a lot of trips in life. But in life you deal with a lot of obstacles and a lot of challenges. Maybe a lot of them could have been handled better if you have wiser parents that have guided you through a challenge or through a situation. But sometimes maybe some of these kids they don't have the right guidance, and that could be within a two-parent household too, you know. And so it's not always picture perfect, but when you come to understand like family dynamics, you do see like how these relationships really affect the growth of an individual. And so you gotta somehow be able to navigate through that. And it's tough. It's tough as a kid because, even as a kid and you don't have much guidance, a lot of times you deal with problems and issues and you don't know how to handle it. And a lot of times you probably make a lot of mistakes. And you gotta learn from it. Maybe you have to learn through it through your own, but at such a young age, it would be better to learn it uh, through a guidance of parents. And so, there's that type of relationship, a parental child relationship, and it's a very important one. And as I've gotten older too, even though I don't have a family for myself, I realized the importance of having a good family, to having the parents there, being involved with your child and your kids, and just being a huge part of their life and showing, instilling a lot of good values in them to help them be a contributable member of society and do good and want to do good for others. And so having that is definitely huge. Um, Obviously, I don't know if this is the episode to go detail into science or go into studies of how that really impacts society, but uh, I'm sure you could do your own research and see how the family, having a family and still the mother and the father really impacts society. And so I guess that's something you could do a research on your own. But from what I know, is that usually if you have a mother and father there and always involved in the kid's life, generally from my observation, the kid turns out pretty well. And so if I were to share a little bit about my experience, well, you know, uh, I grew up to two parents, and I have an older sister. And my parents, as I was growing up, worked long hours, and so they weren't always home a lot. And so even growing up as as a kid, I a lot of I ventured into like activities and sports, and that was always kind of my safe space, like what I always gravitate towards. Um, and it was based off my own interest. It wasn't influenced by really my parents, and so I just really invested into sports and specifically basketball. And my parents would always come home late, and I go to school, come home from school, and I would always be alone for the most part, or I go to like a tutoring after school program, a tutoring center, just focus on my studies and uh, play basketball, and that's what I always gravitate towards. And I think growing up like that, you kind of realize at your age that you would wish you had more involvement with your parents and they'd kind of support you, because you'd see other kids at my age, maybe in high school, junior high, where their parents like show up to every basketball game, always showing support, always being involved. But I never even had that. I think my mom came to just one basketball game out of all during my whole entire high school career, and I played 4 years in high school, and I don't even remember like my dad even coming to a game as well. And so when you get older, you kind of realize that. You kind of realize, oh, it's like they weren't really there. But then, as immigrants coming to America, like many other immigrants, I mean, you kind of have this mentality that you just got to survive and you got to do whatever it takes to provide for your family. And what comes to that, when it comes to this survival instinct, it's like that comes first more than anything. A lot of times, because you're just thinking about providing, you're just thinking about working hard. But that could come at a cost too, especially relationally. If you were to have parents and kids, and there's a lot of time missed that you could have spent together and really got to know and really gotten to have a lot more wisdom and guidance. And I felt like a lot of that was probably missing in my life. And so as an adolescent, you kind of learn things on your own. You kind of learn from your friends, from your peers, and you kind of figure it out. And along the way, you still make a lot of mistakes, and you look back and you're like, oh, maybe if I had proper guidance here, I wouldn't have made those mistakes, or I would have made better decisions. And so that definitely got me to a place where I've just wanted to lean on myself. That kind of made you more selfish in a way, and it became all about you, because you spend all this time by yourself, and it also became about like the things that I enjoyed doing, like playing basketball, and that's all I really want to spend my time doing. That was like my safe haven. That's what you always geared towards, or, hanging out with your friends, spending time with them more so than spending time with family, because you didn't grow up in a way where spending time with your family was important, because you didn't really know any better, really. Um, but I think as I've gotten older, I kind of got a chance to reflect on that and realize like, oh, having family, this parental child relationship is very important to have. If you want, if you want to have good relationships with like your family, it's important you spend time with them and just really be intentional. And being intentional, that would probably be the theme of all this in terms of dealing with relationships, because if you really want to spend time with someone and get to know them, there has to be you have to be really intentional in wanting to get to know them. Like, you have to desire that and want that, if you want to grow in relationships with certain types of people, with your parents, with your family, siblings, friendships, uh, mentorship. I mean, you name it, man. Any type of relationship, business relationship. So, uh, being intentional is very key to all that. And so, yeah, I mean, that's a huge component of our relationships, because a parental child one is something that we grow into. And I think a lot of people do desire to have a family of their own and raise kids, um, and try to be try to be loving towards your family, and take responsibility of, I guess, your herd that you've created for yourself. And so that leads to, relationships with your siblings. I mean, those types of relationships. So, not sure where to go with this. So, most of us have siblings too. We have brothers and sisters, and as a child, you would spend a lot of time with them, right? And you probably have a lot of fights, you bicker, and you just pull pranks or just get just fight over the silliest things, or maybe you spend time with them and have shared interests. It's just you just as childs you just learn to grow with each other, and along the way, that's just, I guess, if you're living in the same household, it's just another roommate that you have. That's your blood, and it could go many different ways. I mean, the siblings that you grow up with could be probably the closest people that you ever had, and you grow a strong bond despite the differences or the fighting or the pranks that you pull. I mean, yeah, you could have the closest relationship, and they could mean the world to you, or it could just not. You could hate them. You could just grow not to love them, and eventually you just kind of fizzle out and go your separate ways and don't really have a relationship with one another. And that could be the same with a parental child relationship, right? I mean, it's not always the case that you have loving parents that raise kids and instill their values. You could have parents that are irresponsible, that don't want to raise their kid, that want to do their own thing, dismissive of any kids' issues, and just think about themselves, very selfish. And maybe that causes a lot of resentment from the child, and creates a lot of issues for them growing up. And again, like, not every family is perfect, not every parent is perfect or child. Um, and so I think in the beginning I kind of laid out like an ideal structure of how parental child relationship should be, but there's a lot of ups and downs, and there's a lot of faults in the relationship, and it could be the blame to the parent or the child. And when you have like imperfect people that are flawed, it's like you're bound to have relationships that go sour or go through difficulties in life. And so you see it amongst siblings, just a lot of fighting or a lot of bullying, and just treating your siblings unfairly, being selfish amongst each other, causing a rift. And that could be amongst the parents and the child, and the parents with each other, and just could be very dysfunctional. And so, how do you even navigate through that? That's tough, because as a parent, and probably as a father, I would say, even the mother too. You gotta set the tone. You gotta be the one responsible in making sure that these are the rules that we need to have as a family. We need to follow them the best we can, and you kind of keep your kids accountable to live a certain way, to have a certain kind of lifestyle, and impose these values and behave in a orderly way, right? But that's not always the case. And so that's where, if you have that parental influence and you do keep your kids accountable, then probably most likely the kids will be able to behave better amongst from the child to the parent to the child to their siblings amongst each other, and there'll be probably more order within the household. But that's not always the case, and usually, the child as they get older, if well, the thing is, like, if the child and their siblings, if they grow up with that kind of influence, then they probably behave a little better. They'll still have those fights and still have those differences, but for the most part, they'll learn to, deal with one another or get along and find a way to make amends, even if there's conflict. Um, and the thing is, when with your siblings, when you're growing up, you're both growing up. You're both trying to figure things out, trying to go through life, figuring out what it is that you want to do with your life, or how you're getting through education, through schooling, and dealing with the social dynamics with your friends and through your schools. And so you kind of have to manage that while also managing like this relationship that you have with your brothers and sisters. And then as you get older, I mean, depending on how that relationship has depending on how it what it went through, you either you don't know if you're going to maintain that relationship as you get older, cuz again, you become an adult, you find your own partners, you get your own family, and then usually all that time is spent uh, with the family that you have of your own. And so, um, yeah, like any type of relationship, you could have close siblings, or you could probably sever that relationship and for whatever reason, and not not see them again, or not have like a really close relationship or whatever. Or maybe, I don't know, you do see them as family, but you don't really feel the need to spend time with them. You rather spend time with other people. And so, and that's the same way you could have a relationship with your parents as well, or the parents with the kid. And yeah, so now we're getting to a point where it's like it becomes very general. Like every type of relationship, you could you get to a point where you were close at one point, but when you become adults and start making your own decisions, start thinking about what you want to spend your time doing, um, maybe you come to realize like, oh, do I want to spend my time with like my siblings or with my parents, or do I want to spend my time doing something else or investing into other types of relationships? And so I guess we could transition to talking about like acquaintances and friends, and that would be outside of your family circle. And when it comes to that, I mean, I would say generally when you develop friendships or acquaintances, like friends come and go, right? I mean, the friends that I had when I was like what, 6 to 12, I mean, I don't even know if I have any of those friends that I still keep in touch with. Not to say that some people don't. I mean, you definitely have your childhood friends that you grew up with, or your neighbor, and you still happen to have maintained that relationship and still make an effort towards keeping that relationship strong. Um, but like myself, I mean, a lot of those friends, I don't talk to, and then maybe you go through middle school, you see it, you make new friends, you know, and maybe you have like your church friends, maybe you have your friends from like extracurricular activities, or maybe through churches or religious institutions. It could be all different types of communities that you've been plugged in as a youth. And so, you definitely have a lot of relationships. You definitely run into a lot of people. And, as you get older, or as you make transitions, going to a different school, or, you know, going into like a specific work field, then the time spent that you used to with your previous friends, you don't spend time with them anymore. And so, or maybe, during your schooling, you had a specific group of friends that you always hung out with, and you've developed really close relationships with them, and over time maybe you went to the same high school, and even throughout college you decided that you wanted to keep in touch, and maybe they become like your lifelong friends. And so I definitely know that. I definitely have a couple friends that I've known since probably when I was 12 or 13, and still remain close friends with them, or even high school. Um, but again, you have to be really intentional about that, and maybe you develop a bond, and maybe like a common shared interest, and you just really value that relationship so much that you're just willing to keep it. And even though like they may have they're not in the same setting that you are, maybe they move to another country or move to another state, or you're just far distance away, but you would maybe visit, where they're at, or they come to you, or um but you still make time to still foster that relationship. And so a lot of times with your core close friends, you're willing to do that because of the relationship that you had over time. It just means so much to you. But as I said earlier, friends come and go. Like, I had close friends when I was younger, and you'd think like they'll be your friends for life, but a lot of transition happens for families, and for the friends that you had back when you were younger. And so a lot of times you just part ways. They were your close friends at that for that time being, and maybe you don't see them again, or maybe you see them a couple times, but again, maybe it just fizzles out, and you're too busy in a certain part or a certain time in your life where you're with a specific group or group of friends or group of community, while they're with their friends and their own community. And so you kind of part ways in that way. And and that's not always a bad thing. I think that's just a part of life that you just accept. And there could be relationships and friendships where it doesn't end well, and maybe there's some issues that you had, and maybe it just severed, and you just move on from that. There's maybe for those two people or the parties where there were issues, maybe you don't reconcile. And so I I don't recall, for me personally, if I had many of those, because I think for the most part I didn't really have too many issues with too many people. um I've had issues, but I wasn't a guy that caused too much problems, to be honest. Or maybe I have, or I'm just being ignorant, or just can't remember things. But I wasn't perfect by any means. And so, I never, it's not like I handled every type of relationship perfectly. But I think over time, when you learn like how you dealt with specific friendships or specific relationships and then the dynamics of it, then you kind of grow from it. And you, next time around, when you meet new people and you develop new friendships, you behave in a way where, like, you don't behave the same way that you used to, where maybe you cause trouble or cause strife in the relationship, but you act in a way where, you just try to be respectful, you try to be caring, try to be kind to people. That's what I try to do now that I'm much older now. Whether it's acquaintances and or friendships that you develop over time. And the thing with acquaintances too, it's like a lot of these people that you meet, you maybe you hang out with them or you spend a little time, or they're just in your class or they're just at your work, but you're not like super close with them where you would hang out with them on your spare time. There's a lot of those too. But again, I just try to be friendly. I just try to be nice, try to be helpful if they need a hand, just stuff like that. But maybe I'm not intentional on wanting to spend time with them outside of like maybe work or school or whatever the case may be. But that doesn't mean I shouldn't be respectful or I shouldn't be nice or have a nice conversation, right? But I guess, you know, uh, when you become older, you kind of pick and choose who it is you want to spend time with. And so, and then, there are those acquaintances where, you do have a closer bond and, you spend more time with them and then you realize, hey, they're a great person. They're worth spending more time with, or maybe circumstances just allow you to spend more time with them, and you find out that this is a relationship worth having. And so, um, yeah, I've definitely had my share of relationships, a lot of friends that come and go. And the way I look at it is like, I do understand that maybe some friends, that I have now, like, they may, we might like go in separate directions, where I might never see them again. And on one hand, that's very humbling because it makes me realize, like, with some people, maybe you just have a certain amount of time that you're supposed to spend time with them. And so you just make the most of it and you just try to be, nice to them, try to be loving to them. At least that's the way I look at it. And hopefully, you contributed in a way where, it was like a positive experience to them or to both parties. And that's the way I look at it. And you never know, you could always run into them again and continue the relationship at a later time. You just never know, right? You never know who it is that you'll continue to spend time with uh, for a longer duration of time. And so, and you have those friends where, you like developed a close bond with that you didn't even spend that much time with, but you just kind of hit it off. You just kind of have like a good synergy with them. And even when you meet them like every once in a while, like you don't even meet with them on a weekly basis, but maybe like once or twice a year you meet with them, and then like you really just picked up where you left off and you don't miss a beat. And even those type of relationships, you want to keep those because those people have been maybe so influential to you, or you just had you know a positive experience with having that relationship. And so, even though so it's like time could be a factor too, but at the same time it doesn't necessarily have to. When it comes to spending time with, or having like a good relationship with them. because maybe for some people you probably don't need to spend as much time to get close to them. But then there could be other people where you spend a lot of time with them and you can't wait to not be a part of their lives, right? So there's that as well. Um so there's stuff like that, and you could have that tie into like a teacher student relationship, or like a boss employee relationship, where maybe there's like, or even a mentor mentee relationship where there's kind of like a hierarchy in the relationship where you kind of have like a superior and an inferior position. I don't know if that's the right terms to even put it, but a relationship in a way where one party has more influence on the other. And so, you have to navigate through those two, and maybe through those relationships, you could grow a close bond and develop a friendship. But a lot of those times, it's like you have one party, the boss, the mentor, the teacher, that's doing most of the influencing, sharing the wisdom, and maybe the student, the teacher, or the worker, or the employee is the one um, asking for feedback or asking for help. So it's kind of like a give and take kind of relationship, a give and need. Of course, there could still be a close bond, and you could still grow from that relationship, but it's like a give and need type of relationship that's also there, that adds a factor to it. Um, Not to say that like the other types of relationships don't have that, but there's like a specific intention with those relationships, right? And um, you never know how close you'll be, like even as a student to teacher, maybe there's not much there. Maybe you just go to like class and you don't really interact with the teacher, and you just do your own thing, pass the class, and that's it. Or maybe you could be the teacher's pet. You could go to the office hours, talk to the teacher, develop a relationship, and maybe it'll be a relationship that lasts longer. And so there's stuff like that, or you know, maybe with like your boss, your manager, you're the employee. Again, you just clock in for your hours and you do your work. You know, you're very cordial, but not too close. But maybe there could be other relationships where outside of work, you're willing to spend time with your manager, with your boss, and again, developing a closer relationship. So, um, I guess it really depends if there's synergy there within those type of relationships. Um, but yeah, I mean, um, I just grown to understand that people come and go, and as I navigate through these relationships, and there's like specific things that you could go into, like detailed on how to deal with certain obstacles, or deal with certain instances where there could be like miscommunication, or there could be just differences where you can't seem to come to terms or find a middle ground. I mean, I don't know if that was where I was headed with this podcast. I just wanted to be more general, and really for myself to kind of reflect on like my own relationships that I have with people. Because if I really break it down for myself, I mean, like I I try to spend time with my family, like my parents. Um, like even for my sister, she's a lot older than me. She lives uh in a different state, and so we try to see each other periodically. We still communicate through calls and texts a little bit here and there. Um, and there's also like my close group of friends that I've hung out with for decades. that I still keep in touch with. Like you have like these group messages that you have with close friends, and you hang out with like a specific group that you know for a while and their spouses, and you get to know develop relationships with like their partners. There's also community with um like maybe extracurricular activities. So I know I used to like even train at a martial arts gym, and I used to build relationships through like training partners, or even like to the church I attend to on a weekly basis. I built relationships through there, maintain friendships there. So there's all those type of relationships, past friends that I had, um, maybe like previous clients that I still keep in touch with, people I met like maybe in my travels. So there's stuff like that, I've that I felt like I value these relationships and I want to keep them. And maybe, through time, like some of these relationships might go separate ways. Maybe not so much because there's issues with these people, but more so it's just life, we all go in different directions. We all move. We all get different jobs at different locations. We all have families. And so I've come to understand that's just something you just have to accept when you go through relationships in life. And like I mentioned before, I just try to be very appreciative of the relationships that I do have at the moment, and then just try to be positive and try to do good with these relationships that I currently have, and maybe, you know, help them out when they're in need, and they'll definitely help me out. We're all we're all social creatures, right? And so, we all need these types of relationships. That's what keeps us sane. And whether it's just to have conversation, whether it's to share like the things that are going on in our lives and we just need someone to hear us, or you just want to spend quality time with them, and you just want to have fun, play games or go on a trip, and you just want to do it with people that you enjoy hanging out with. And I think those are things that over time, like, you just learn to cherish. You just appreciate the experiences, the memories, and I try to just not take it for granted as maybe I did when I was younger, because I realized like time is very limited, and you want to spend that time with people that you enjoy being around with, or you feel like um they'll be beneficial for you. You feel like they'll be a huge help for you, and the same that you could be a huge help to others too in that way. And so a lot of my relationships, a lot of my time that I spend with people, I definitely want to be positive, and I just want to do good in that way. Whether it's a parental child relationship, or whether it's a friendship, or um, could be a work type of relationship, mentor, mentee. And, these relationships don't always go perfect, but I would always aim towards trying to, find resolution, or trying to have, at least amount of problems as possible. And if there are problems, just learn how to deal with it through having good communication, and um, trying to find ways where, both parties could really find a middle ground and be able to come to terms with whatever issues there are. And so, I mean, you could get very technical with it and very specific on various ways you could go about it. I don't know if I'm the right person to learn that from. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of wise people that could help, uh, that focus on those fields, that can have better input, better insight than I do. But I think generally it's just like, Yeah, I try to treat people with kindness and try to be loving and whatever type of relationship it is. And I just try to be a lending hand, and I know at times too, like I need help too. And that's where, just having these close bonds like really come in, especially in times of need, like when you're going through something, like having loved ones, having your friends and family, your community to be there with you on your side, by your side, and helping you get through certain tough times in your life. It just it's very valuable to have. And so, um I don't know if this was very helpful. I hope it was. Maybe I was just talking nonsense, acting like I know like how to deal with relationships and all that. Like, what do I know, honestly? I'm just I'm just speaking nonsense, right? But that's just me reflecting on how I value relationships, and kind of giving a breakdown even just for myself, and just having a appreciation for people and valuing relationships. I think, at least for me, that's what it's all about. And so, even if you do have these relationships for a limited amount of time, I just try to make the most of it, and I just try to always be positive with my experiences. And so, I'm sure there's a lot of things I missed out on. I'm sure there's a lot of types of relationships, and you could definitely go into detail. But with the time that we have, I think it's good to just close it here. So I really appreciate you guys listening to me talk about relationships and how to navigate through it. I hope you value the relationships that you do have in your life, and hopefully, um, in the relationships that you do value, you could definitely with grow in those relationships. And so, thank you guys so much. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and hopefully, we'll post up more content. And if you like to give more feedback, or you want me to talk about a certain topic, I'd love to talk about it. You could drop that in the comments below. If you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel and drop a like for this video if you enjoyed this content. I'll see you guys again. Peace.